So while I was playing Shadow of Labyrinth, there was two main thoughts that kept going through my head. Number one, I have no idea what's going on. And number two, I really like the way this game looks. But was that enough to really carry this game over? Is that enough to make Shadow Labyrinth like the best reimagining of Pac-Man that we've seen? And more importantly, while it is stylish and it looks cool, does the combat really hold up? All of that stuff we're going to talk about here today while we're talking about Shadow of Labyrinth and if this is a game that will revive the Pac-Man series. Well, let's get to all of that here in this video while we hang out and talk about Shadow of Labyrinth. But before we do that, I just want to thank all of you guys who are liking and commenting and sharing the videos. It means the world to me and I just can't thank y'all enough. Anyway, into Shadow of Labyrinth. Now, when I first saw like the launch trailer, I thought this game looked really cool and it was a really good idea. Don't get me wrong, there was part of me that thought like, oh, this is just a cash grab. They're gonna put some fresh paint on the corpse of a video game icon and make a subpar game. What I didn't know is that Bandai Namco has been working on this for quite a while. I actually learned a lot from the game's wiki page, to be honest. I actually learned more about the game from the wiki page than I did the actual game, but you know, that's neither here nor there. The main takeaway is just the fact that this reimagining of Pac-Man has been something in the works for a while, and I do think that unless there's just some catastrophic failure, I think they're gonna move forward with this version of Pac-Man for a while. And in the game, Pac-Man actually summons us. He calls us the Chosen, but don't get too hyped on that because there were like 7 other Chosens before us and they failed, so he ended up eating them. But the first test that we're asked to do is to pick up this sword, which might seem like just a simple task, but apparently no one else can pick up this sword. This is who Pac-Man is trying to summon. Somebody who can pick up this sword and help him get the hell out of where he's at. He doesn't explain much to us, but we are luckily not going to be Pac-Man food because we can pick up the sword and use it. Later on, we do actually find out that this sword will only attune to certain swordsmen, and most importantly, it's the only weapon that can really do serious damage against some of these creatures that live in this weird dimension that we're trying to escape. Again, we don't find out very much about the story until further along, and even then, if you blink, you might miss some of it, or just forget some of the information that you learned earlier, because the story isn't always at the forefront of your mind. There is something much more important to you as you're navigating through these levels. And for me, it was my first issue with the game, and that is just how far apart the save points are. As some of you may know, that in a Metroidvania style game, the save points are usually where you can refill your health and also, you know, save, which is crucial in Metroidvanias, and this one specifically, because they really lean into the whole maze thing. It's like they decided, hey, there's 2 things we really want to keep from Pac-Man, and that is Pac-Man eating people, or eating creatures I should say, and the mazes. That's the most important. And honestly, that sort of makes sense when you think about the natural progression from Pac-Man into a Metroidvania. It makes full sense. I mean, this is a game where you had to navigate around a maze, which is often, at least in my opinion, the way Metroidvania levels feel like. And while that aspect did transfer over to modern Metroidvanias quite easily, the thing that they didn't do is one of the biggest cardinal sins. It's the save points. You have to have the save points, especially right before a boss battle, which is something else this game does not do. There's been many times in the game where I had quite a long run and I've been exploring, unlocking a lot of the map, and then I run into a boss. Usually at that point, you're not at full health. You have been playing a little bit riskier because you didn't know you were going to run into a boss. And then when you get defeated, you're thrown all the way back to your last save point, which could have been 20-30 minutes ago. And these are the moments where, honestly, I almost quit. I just didn't feel like doing it again. Although to give the game credit, since I had been there before, I knew a quicker way to get to the boss battle. I knew what enemies to watch out for and to try to just do everything I could to keep my health up. And I will also say that the boss fights by themselves are not that difficult, which is another reason I didn't give up, because I had never been up against a boss where I just felt like I was completely underpowered. And so, yeah, maybe I have to run through a slew of different enemies to get to the boss, but as long as I can keep my health up, I knew the boss encounter wouldn't be just impossible. And one of the reasons that victory was achievable is because of the different forms that you are able to change into. Well, there's 3 total that you have. The swordsman, which is your kind of default state. You can turn into Puck or Pac-Man, although there's only once or twice where this is really important during a boss battle. Usually you turn into him for navigation or, you know, a shortcut kind of thing in the actual level. But the other one is Gaia, And Gaia is like this mechanized, sort of looks like Godzilla type creature that you can turn into. And as Gaia, you are pretty much invincible. Even standing toe to toe with a boss, they don't do much damage to you, and you now wield a ton of power. And you actually get to be Gaia for quite a long time. There was one specific boss fight I remember. I was Gaia pretty much the entire boss fight. It was a cakewalk. It was simple to get through. Now, this doesn't happen through all of them, or even most of them, but Gaia and that transformation really does help out, especially when you stumble upon a boss that you didn't expect and you hadn't saved in a long time. And honestly, what is even cooler about Gaia is the way that you're able to transform into him. So you have a gauge that you have to fill up, and this is achieved by Pac-Man feasting on the corpses of your defeated enemies. That's also the best way to loot materials from your defeated enemies. If you just beat them and let them kind of dissipate on their own, all you'll get is XP, and that XP you can use to upgrade your base stats and also unlock certain skills. Outside of the save points, my only other big issues with this game is the fact that the combat got stale relatively quickly. For the most part, your most effective way to fight enemies is using a normal attack and then using your evade button, your roll, your dodge, whatever you want to call it. And don't get me wrong, there are other abilities, there are skills you can use, but honestly, they just don't flow very organically. Many of the skills that you use actually have like kind of a little bit of a ramp up time or a delay, and it's just much easier just to use your normal attack and, like I said, dodge whenever you're being targeted. Not to mention the skills also use your stamina or your mana or whatever you want to call it. I think in this game it's called like ESP. All of that gets depleted when you're using your skills, which, okay, cool, it has to come from somewhere, but also your dodge also depletes that same pool of energy, so you can get to a point where you can't dodge anymore and you ran out of stamina. Although real talk, that never happened to me. I could just see it happening since they both use the same form of energy. But unfortunately, it's not just the swordsman form that uses the exact same combat. It's also Gaia and the Pac-Man form themselves. All of these use the exact same form of combat, and which is nice because you don't get confused by how to fight, but it also doesn't really feel like anything's different. Only your power or your ability to move. But as far as like actual combat, feels like the exact same thing. And so this does get repetitive after a while. And that's really why I think this is a difficult game for me to call. Because when it comes to the graphics, the look, the style, I really like it. This dark, gritty version of Pac-Man, I think, is a re-imaging that needed to happen a long time ago. But then even on the Switch too, the game performs really great. So all of that is super positive, and there's a lot to enjoy about the game. But it's some of those things that I brought up in the actual gameplay that seem to just drag it down. I can definitely see there being a place where some people would just give up on the game because of the whole save point issue, or there's a number of people who I think might actually get bored of the game because of the simplicity of the combat and also the boss battles not being very difficult. These are two things I think they need to rectify, and if they do, I think they're going to have a great series on their hand. And hopefully for this game we do get an update, maybe that will create more save points, or at least save points right before the boss would help a lot. Then they could go back and tune the difficulty of the bosses. All of that stuff I think is easily achievable through patches, which I hope they do, but I'll be honest, even if they don't, if there's a sequel to this game, I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm really excited to see what they could do with this strong foundation. But as it sits right now, I have to give it a 7.5 out of 10. If they do get some different updates, or they change, they have some DLC, I don't know, some stuff that happens to the game, then I could see it becoming a much higher rated game. But that's my thoughts on Shadow Labyrinth. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Is this a game that you're interested in picking up? Is this one that you're going to wait for a sale or just completely pass? Do you like Metroidvanias? Do you not like them? I don't know. Any and all of your thoughts down in the comment section below is much appreciated. I love each and every one of you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.